Welcome to another episode of Daddy Confessions. Today, I am here with, I'm going to say a friend of mine. Everybody's a friend of the podcast, friend of the show, and James Izzard. I will let you introduce yourself today. James, can you introduce yourself to the people?
Sure. Thanks, John. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be on with you today. I think it's really cool, this podcast you have. My name is James Izzard Jr. I am a father of four, a husband of 26 years. My wife and I celebrate 26 years this year. My life is pretty adventurous, I'll say it that way. We've been in pastoral ministry for about 25 years. I'm also a executive and life coach and a father. So that's what I think lands me here today, the father piece. So I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about that. So good to be with you, John. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for being here. James, it's so weird calling James because I called you pastor for so many years. But Bishop Izzard was my pastor for several, I don't know, 8 years, 7 years, something like that. When we moved back into the DC area, and someone who I look up to. I watched him raise his kids over the past 7 years. I know some people have seen you and known you for much longer than that, but for me, having a 7-year-old, I was like, what am I doing here as a father, trying to figure it all out and being able to even watch from a distance as you are raising your kids has been something that has been really, really inspiring for me, right? And so today we're going to talk about what are some of the things that we wish we would have known about fatherhood before we became a father or as we were becoming a father. So, you get to that day when the kids are being born and you're in the hospital room, you're watching them, come into this world, and you realize very quickly that you have a little person that you have to take care of. And in your case, 4 little people that you had to take care of, not all at once before, And so, so my first question is, what was one thing that you realized very early on as a parent about raising kids that you wish you would have known prior to day one?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I remember with our first child, so we have 2 boys, 2 girls, as you know. Oldest is 24 now. But I remember when she was born, the biggest emotion I felt was fear. I was just deathly afraid of being a new dad. And I think for a lot of reasons, but one of the things I learned right off the front, off the bat, was that you don't have to have all the answers and you don't have to have all the resources. I thought I needed to have enough, needed to have all the answers, and I needed to have enough money. And I don't know, unless you're either born into wealth or you have a special situation, the question of whether or not you can handle this, financially is always going to be a question. And then whether or not I have the answers that I need to have to, address every situation that my children or my family face is always a question. So those were things that I wish I had known ahead of time. Like, you don't have to have all the answers, right? Nor do you have to have a whole lot of money. You kind of work it out as you go along. So that was something for me that I learned early on.
No, I'm right there with you, and I think that it's always one of the things that I hear a lot from people as they are thinking about starting a family, right? Is they want to get to a place where they feel secure, like mostly financially is what they're talking about, right? Having that financial security, and the reality of it is that there's never enough security in terms of the finances to make sure that you can give your child everything that they need, right? Because there's always going to be a situation where, and what I've found, and I remember hearing about this recently, is that one of the things that has been most interesting for me is understanding how important it is to give up something for your children, right? Like, it's sacrifice.
Yeah.
When you bring a person into the world, right? So when you're having a child, bringing a child into the world, you are, in fact, saying that I want to give as much as I possibly can to that little person so that they can be secure and safe, and ultimately successful, whatever that looks like. And that means a certain amount of sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
You sacrifice sleep first. Then you sacrifice, time, right?
Yeah.
Like it's and it's all for the good, right?
Yeah.
You're giving that little person so much, and that's why, and this is something that for me is important, is the idea of having two parents,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because that sacrifice can be so much for one person. I saw it with my mother, and so having two parents who are engaged in that process makes that sacrifice more manageable.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, you hit something real important. I think the whole intent behind why we have children, and the reality is, I mean, people have children for different reasons. Sometimes they have children because they were engaged in an act that resulted in them having a child. They had no intent of having a child. They had no plans of having a child. So now all of a sudden they have to align their thinking with, okay, now I'm a father, now I'm a mother. I gotta kind of change my thought process. And then there are other people who do plan that process, right? Where they plan to become parents. Um, and you're so right. A selfish person can never make for a good parent, I think, because it teaches you right off the bat that you have to be selfless and give up your time, give up, you really don't belong to yourself anymore.
Right.
If you, in my opinion, if you're going to do it right. You really have to take that child's well-being and at heart and do what's going to be best for them. And that can be tough if you're used to kind of doing your own thing, your own way, how you want to do it and when you want to do it. The other thing is some people have children because it sort of fills a void, I think, in their own sort of heart and life, and it appeases an emotional part of them that hadn't necessarily developed fully yet, right? And gives them this sort of comfort. And that can make for a difficult situation. But to your point, though, I agree with you, John. If we're having children from the perspective of this is a little person that we're bringing into the world that we want to give ourselves to make them good, productive citizens who understand how to interface and interact with life and with people, then it takes a lot of sacrifice.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of sacrifice.
So, with that said, it brings me to a piece of, this is daddy confessions. We talk about marriage as well, for sure. The piece of how long were you and your wife married prior to having your first child?
2 years.
2 years.
Right at 2 years.
Okay. So now, I imagine when you all were first married, it was exciting. Y'all were you doing, young married people things, going out, having dinner, enjoying life, things like that. What was one of the biggest changes you noticed as it relates to your marriage once you all had your first child?
Well, there was a lot of. I keep in mind we were babies. Like, so when we got married, I think I had just turned 22. My wife had just turned 20 or 21. So we were young, man. Like you said, we were running and gunning. We were going out. We would just. I mean, it might be we might wake up. We might fall asleep and wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning and say, "Hey, you want to go get something to eat?" And we'll get up and just go out and do something. But once you have kids, that all kind of changes. Right, that goes out the window. Plus, you're young, you're energetic. And so, we were very attracted to each other, put it that way. When you have children, those types of times when you want to kind of be together, you have to plan those things, right? So we noticed immediately. And then I'll be honest, so I was used to having my wife's sort of like full attention, right? And she was used to having my full attention. So when we had our first child, I had to adjust, like, I actually got to share myself now. Like, I got to share the attention. So that was an adjustment for me too, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
So I had to, I had to really make that adjustment and realize, okay, it's no longer just me, no longer just her. We gotta, like, use your term, a little person in the mix that we love as part of us, and we gotta like really adjust how we do things. So everything we did at that point was done with the consideration of how does this impact our daughter, right? How does this impact what we're doing as a family? So yeah, it was a big change for us.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that about sharing your spouse, right?
Yeah,
Because I think that I think the interesting part for me is I oftentimes, I grew up, my father was not there for most of my life. Um, and I oftentimes think that maybe it was, not making excuses for him and why why he left, but thinking about whether he understood that piece of it, right? That
yeah, yeah,
sacrifice, another sacrifice of time as it relates to the attention he was getting from my mother, right? And how that had to change pretty drastically once there's a baby involved. And
yeah,
it should be both ways, right? Like we as dads, we are supposed to be, just as engaged as mom, but we know that the kids gravitate towards mom. I
yeah,
just saw a little TikTok video the other day where this mom and this mother and father were standing on either side of the kid, and they had their son and their daughter in the middle, and they said run in either direction and see who the kids follow. And every time the kids went with mom. Like,
they ran with mom.
not surprising, that doesn't surprise me. Like, I don't care, boys, girl, it doesn't matter. Mom is the one that they're gonna follow, right?
Yeah,
So, but what that does mean is that as men, as husbands, the situation that we married into
yeah,
when there were not kids there was one of full attention. Like we gave
yeah,
each other full
yeah,
attention. We had that time to give each other full attention, and that is no longer the case. So
yeah,
circling back, I'm like, well, I see men who dip out early on in their when they when their wives have kids, or when the person that they're with has kids, even if they're not married. And I oftentimes wonder if that is the reason why they are why they think about or why they leave, right? Because they don't feel like they're getting the time anymore.
yeah, yeah. That's possible, man. I know. Speaking of daddy confessions, I mean, and that was extra hard for me because my situation was the exact opposite of yours. So, like you said, your dad was gone early. My dad was always there. My mom was always there. But I was an only child growing up. I had older siblings, but they were like almost adults. So I was a product of a second marriage. My mom and dad. My dad was my mom's second husband, and then so I was born out of that union. So my siblings were older, so I was used to all the attention as a kid. Like, I mean, I was always given all the, they were always, everything they did was surrounded around me. Whether it was my sports, school, whatever it was. So I think I had a false sense of expectation, right, of what things were going to be when I got married. So that really made it hard for me when we had a kid. I'm expecting now I'm the center of attention with my wife. She's the center of attention with me. And you got a kid, and I got to share this space. So to that point, yeah, it's hard, man. It's hard, and a less mature person, it can be hard to process that if you don't have people to help you process through that.
And you chose to do it at least 2 more times after that, bring more kids into the
Yeah, man. I don't know what I was.
so for the people, James has a daughter, the oldest child, a son,
Mhm.
and twins. And
Yeah,
you listen to the podcast, you've heard me talk about twins, how I wanted twins. I'm glad at this point we ain't trying again. We're done. Or else I would probably end up being like James here and having 4 kids. And I think 2 is our max. I got enough
yeah,
gray hair.
yeah,
I can do it again. And I'm older than you were when you started having kids. So
yeah. That's true. But John, we wasn't planning for number 3 and 3 and 4. We weren't planning. My wife at the time was actively, like, we were, using, things to try to keep, she was using birth control, things like that. But she got pregnant anyway.
mm,
So we were like, okay, all right, well, okay, this is number 3. But when we found out it was 3 and 4, that's a whole nother podcast. So
Who, it's so interesting though, how many people I know who have twins. And, I didn't think they were that, I would know that many people who've had twins, but it's
Yeah.
interesting to see and hear people talk about that kind of family
They're,
dynamic.
they're fun. They're really fun, man. They're really fun.
So let's talk a little bit about you know let's move along a little bit. So your oldest is born now. You guys have a second, so you have your second child, who's now what,
20,
18, 19,
20.
20. Man, that,
Yeah,
that went fast. So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's right, he's 20 now.
yeah,
And so now you have two kids, right?
yeah.
And tell me a little bit about what you felt changed in terms of the family dynamic, maybe um, once your second child was born.
So both me and my wife, I think at that point, we were probably a lot more comfortable because there was a 4-year difference between our oldest, and our son. So we had been married 2 years when we had our oldest, and then it was 4 years before we had our son, James. So we had matured a little bit by then, you know what I mean? And I think we both were a little more comfortable. The only thing was there was an outside dynamic that impacted it. So I had gotten a new job in a new profession, right, in federal law enforcement, and that required me to be away for 2.5 months.
Mhm.
My son James at the time he was a toddler, he was a little baby. Well, he was a baby. James was probably 18 months, something like that. So that was a unique dynamic because there was a whole 2.5 month time frame there where I totally didn't have any physical contact with him or my wife because of the job situation. But when I came back, I think we were able to keep on moving much smoother than we were with the first of our daughter because we had learned so much,
Right.
you know. And by that point, I already kind of knew how this worked, so I had got past that whole I need the attention
Right.
type thing, and really just start focusing on the blessing and the beauty of a child, and like saying, okay, I need to learn. I still say to this day, confession here, I still say to this day that with our daughter, if I could go back into those first 4 years of her life, I would have done things so much differently
Mm.
because I was so filled with fear. I was nervous as a new father because I was so young.
Right.
I was nervous as a new father. I was nervous as a new husband. I had a daughter. For me, everybody is different. For me, that created another layer of anxiety.
Right.
Maybe that's a confession about who I was years ago. And that's part of my issue, right? But that created another layer of anxiety. And I just was afraid, right? So I wish I could go back and enjoy that time versus just kind of getting through it, if you will. We love our daughter and all that, but so I would go back and do that different. I think that was different when I had my son. We were in a different place. We were just in a different headspace.
It's interesting that you said that, and I appreciate you saying that because I think that there is just anxiety that comes along with having a child, having this person who relies on you for everything and trying to make sure you're doing it the right way, right? I'm sure there's books. I don't think I've ever read any. We took classes on how to change diapers and all that stuff, but
Yeah.
but ultimately, like, it's just you. It's you and your spouse, right? Like, so the two of you have to figure it out. And this
Yeah.
little person is your little person, right?
Yeah.
They're a member of your family. They are the person who ultimately 18, 20 years from the time that they are born, you're going to see them go off into the world, and you just want to make sure that you're doing it right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think about that with Trey as well all the time. I'm like, if I could go back and do those first couple of years over, I would do things differently.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that means that Wyatt has benefited, and well, maybe benefited, maybe not. He might be a little on the badder side than he should be, because we just like, they just do this happens,
That's what they
but
do.
but that wasn't the case with Trey. Like, we were just
Yeah.
cocooned around him all the time.
Yeah.
And so now you have your two, right? You realize what you could have done differently for your oldest. You
Yeah.
got your second, and then boom,
Yeah.
several years later, you got two more.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did that do to the dynamic in your in your family, in your house?
You know what's funny? So the twins, they were born in 2001. So they're almost I mean, not 2001, I'm sorry, 2005. James was born in
Right.
2001. They're 2005. So they're like almost 16 now. So they were born right on that edge of the whole iPhone generation thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Where like technology really drastically and quickly started changing really fast around that time frame. Like it's been changing for a long time, I get that. But like for them,
It went quick.
yeah, life. So my son James, he was born in 2001. He was born at that time too, but he still he still had a little appreciation for what things were before certain booms in technology.
Right. He knew what a house phone was.
Exactly. A good point. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Exactly. He knows what a house phone is. My twins, it's a whole nother world for them. So yeah, we were pretty much having fun with it by the time we had the twins. Still the same, stressors that you have with kids, but by then we were just a lot more relaxed and a lot more comfortable. But now we had to adjust to a new world. Like that is the part for me as a father that's been hard. It's like things have evolved so much. And I've learned that, even with, if I can be personal for a moment, even with my own moral convictions, right, as a a believer in my faith and also in ministry and all those things, my moral convictions, understanding that the world has evolved and how it moves, right? And while it may not align with my moral convictions, I'm certainly fixed in what my moral convictions are. But I have to train my kids up in a different world than I was trained up in.
Mm-hmm.
I got to raise them in a different world than I was raised in. So the way I talk to them about things that are moral convictions for our family, our convictions never change. They are what they are.
Right.
But the way I talk to them about it changes. Those are some of the biggest changes I saw for me and my wife for our twins. Was that things that even my son, James, when he came about, the world was moving a certain way, but by the time my twins were born, the world was really moving different.
Right.
Like the world was just moving different.
Right.
And so one of the biggest things for us is we had to really make a huge adjustment in how we parented them, how we interacted, how we communicated with them, that type of thing. So that was the biggest thing for us. I think by then we felt better. Now I was scared when I found out we was having twins, for sure. Like I'm like, oh, I'm scared again now, but it was all good, man. They're so different though. That's amazing. They came out the same time, but so different.
Such a different people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's I think that is it's amazing. It's amazing to be able to have a home filled with such different personalities,
Yeah.
and be able to kind of, my mother always told me, and I mentioned this in one of my other podcasts, about how she always told me, wait until you have kids and you'll see.
Yeah.
And what I saw was that all of the situation I put my mother through, all the stressors I put her through, were due in part to my personality, right, and the things that I wanted to do, and a mixture of, in my case, interestingly enough, obviously with my mother and my father, so a mixture of the two, but not really knowing my father, that was always tough because I never understood. What always made me upset when she would say, "I'm just like my father," because I didn't know him. I had no idea I was like him because I had no idea who he was really. Like I know him, I've seen him. Matter of fact, this on the other day, but not knowing his personality, it made it very tough for me to hear her say that I was just like my father, right? But I look at my boys now. My wife and I argue about this all the time, of which part of them is most like us. Like she would say that the boys, when I say the boys are loud, she would say, well, that's because of you. It comes from your side of the family. I'll say, I'm not a loud person. I don't understand where that comes from. I
Yeah.
think she's a loud person. Her friends will say that otherwise, that she's not loud and it must come from me. But I say all that to say that we look at these little people and they are, you know, a conglomeration of us, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
of who we are, and you know, they take different parts of us and they go off and they live in the world, and they do things that maybe we never thought we would do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something that has been really exciting for me, is like trying to get my sons to a place where they can, and no other way to say it, kind of be greater than
Yeah.
I was, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
um and so what do you think about that? So you have older kids, right? You
Yeah.
got, you know, high schoolers and kids off in the world living their life. What do you think
Yeah.
about that idea of you know, bringing your kids up to be greater than you? And how do you think you kind of you and your wife kind of put that into place as you all were raising the kids?
Yeah, I mean, man, that's the goal. That's been the goal for us. I like That's a good point you make. Because I look, parenting to me, parenting is one of the greatest blessings you could ever be given. Yes, it could be
Absolutely.
frightening, you know, got time, but when you get the opportunity to really like help mold the life of a person
Mhm.
that can have an impact, you know, and I think any good parent wants their kids to take the baton and go further than they went. And that's our goal. And the beauty is that, and this is something that I've learned over time, you know, I've learned over time that you have to let your kids, you have to identify your kids' gifts, what they're good at, and then exploit them
Mhm.
in a positive sense.
Positive
Like
sense, right?
help them to become great at what they're good at. You know what I mean? And boost that. And that was important because they're not going to be good at what I would good. They're not going to be good at what I'm good at, or I'm not going to be good at what they're good at. Like I have to appreciate what they're good at, and then fan the flame. Like,
Right.
you know, let them be great at that. So for us, what we do is, or what we try to do is, we try to help our kids to identify. Okay, this is what you really are gifted at. It may not look like what daddy is gifted at or mommy's gifted at, but like this is what you're gifted at.
Right.
So go like be really good at that. Like go be really, really good at that and take it as far as you can take it. That's what we try to do. So I mean, we definitely want them to be much better than we are. I know, like I can look at my kids now and see like the different personalities in each of them. You know, like Micah. I can say the name because you know my
Right.
kids.
Right.
Micah is sort of he's the cognitive one, right? He's the brainiac in our family. His sister Malaya, she's the very practical one. Like Malaya is only 16, but she could probably live on her own right now and survive because she's just practical,
She
right?
ready to do it, right.
She knows how to navigate life. James is a compassionate one. Like he's gonna probably be the pastor in the family. Like he'll probably be the next, you know, he'll be taking the mantle of pastor from dad at some point. And then Tajay is the one who kind of understands the big picture of life and knows what she wants and goes and gets it.
Yeah.
So like we identify each of those and like, all right, we need to like appreciate. I need to appreciate that not all my children will go to college and get a degree like daddy did or mommy did. Not all of them are going to be a federal, you know, in a federal law enforcement officer or executive or this or that. And just appreciate what they're good at, man, and really, really push them in that direction. That's what we try to do. I don't know what you and Wivette's sort of thought process
Well, I
is on
mean,
that.
you know, we still early on in the process,
Yeah,
but
that's true. That's true. That's true.
but absolutely, I agree with you, and you know, and the word keeps rolling around the back of my head as we're talking right now, is it's like our kids, our family is our ministry.
Yeah,
You know,
sure.
that is it's our ministry and home. It's, you know, taking the people and that we have close to us, and taking the things that they are good at and exploiting those for the good, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
creating an environment where they can grow and learn and feel comfortable in the things that they're good at, so that they can go out into the world and be productive, and create their own ministry, right? And
yeah,
then and that is, and their own families and things, and that's really where I see it. And so I, you know, I look at my boys every day, and I'm just taking it in, all the little things that they're doing,
That's great.
the things
That's
that
great.
excite them,
Yeah.
and being excited by those moments. Now, I don't always feel like, man, I get it. You like Minecraft. Whew, I'm
Yeah.
kind of sick of hearing about Minecraft, but what else can we do with that? Like, how
Yeah.
else can we, what's the next step beyond playing the game of Minecraft or talking with your friends about Minecraft? And, and I
Mhm.
think it also goes to them continuing to see us
Yeah.
as people who are growing and learning constantly, right?
Yeah. That's so important.
Yeah, and I think that when they see that, when they know that it's not just struggle, it's not just moments when you feel down, right? But there's moments of celebration, there's moments of moving forward, and there are things that we are doing as adults that are for the good of the family, and for the good of ourselves, right? So our personal growth, that's when they realize that, what, it's not just going through the motions, to get to adulthood. Like, there's
Yeah.
excitement in that. There's things that we can do to continue to be, and it doesn't always happen at one time, right? You don't always get to like, my wife she didn't graduate her undergrad degree as a nurse, right?
Yeah.
But that's what she loves, and that's what she's doing now, and she's stuck with it, and she's gone back to school again, and she's making it happen in the way that works for her. And so my
Yeah.
sons tell me that, Daddy, I don't want to go to college, I want to do this. And
Yeah.
then later on down the line, they decide that that's something they want to do. That's fine with me. We everything doesn't have to happen in a straight line,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's awesome. Man, that's powerful you said that. Because you learned that far earlier than I did, man. It took me a minute to learn that. And it's funny, your wife's story is the same as my wife's story in that regard. But so my wife is more likely to think that way than I am. Like, I'm a linear thinker just in general. Like, that's just how I live. Like, that's just me. So it took me a long time to learn. Like you said, everything doesn't happen in a straight line. Like, it's different. And I remember growing up, my parents. So neither one of my parents graduated from high school, right? Because of the era they were in, they
Right.
had to, they had to come home and work and all that. But I remember them always saying, "Hey, son, you're gonna be the first one of our family graduate from college. You got to go to college, blah blah blah." They just kind of put that in me. And so when that happened, I just came out thinking, yeah, it's not an option. All of my kids got to go to college, like, period. This is what, just to use one example, that was my thinking on that. But then as, you learn and you grow and like, yeah, but like, there's so many other things that they're good at that they could do that they may not necessarily need to go to college for. They
Right.
may not want to go to college, or that might not be their thing.
Right.
So it took me a long time to learn it's a blessing that you learned it so early in your son's life, so that when they grow up, like, they won't have to go through that phase of you having to learn that.
Yeah.
No.
But it's interesting though, because I do I credit my wife for that.
Yeah.
Because that's her mindset is that much different than mine, right? So
Yeah.
because I'm very much a linear thinker as well. Like, for the most part, like, everything for me up until I think I met my wife was pretty much black and white. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. That's me. That's me.
it was, I got to go to college.
Yeah.
I got to get a job.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. I guess I'll stay there till I die, right? Or whatever, like, until I retire. And that was where my mind was. And then I met my wife and I realized that, you know what? It doesn't have to be that linear.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then we had kids, and I realized that their lives could go in many different directions. And I don't want to pigeonhole them, not because um I don't think that there's some good in having a plan. I do think
Yeah.
there's some good in having a plan,
For
but I
sure.
also believe that one of the things that has been difficult for me as an adult is just feeling completely happy in the work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and it's just because sometimes I feel like, I like to fix things. I like to dabble with computers, or now I'm doing this podcast, which I'm really enjoying doing. And that's not the straight line. right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my work is the straight line, but those other things that really kind of fuel me are really important to me, and I want my kids to understand that it's okay to do things that fuel you, that make you excited to get up
Yeah.
every day and do what you want to do. So
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. That was, as you know, being a part of our life in the church for a long time. That was something that more recently for my kids, the transition. My wife and I's transition from our most recent pastorate at Life Builders. That was something that my kids saw. Right, they took note of that, and they realized that it was that while on the outside, for some, it appeared that like caught by surprise, but on the inside, I think they saw that and they were like, "Yeah, Dad, it doesn't have to." They didn't use the terminology linear thinking in a straight line, but since we're talking about like, "Yeah, Dad, you're right. It doesn't have to be a straight line. Like there are so many ways that you can fulfill your ministry other than just standing up on Sunday morning preaching, to a congregation or doing the pastoral things you do there." And you're right. I think it gave my kids license to say, yeah, oh yeah, I can do something different. Like I don't have to do this way.
yeah,
That's important. That's
very
important.
important. I think it's
Yeah.
hugely important, and it's something that they don't tell you when you are going through this whole I want to be a parent, we're about to have a kid thing, right? Like you don't get that. And I think one of the scariest parts is the fact that as a parent, we get set into that mindset, right? Because
Yeah.
again, going back to the whole idea of having to protect this little person, having to sacrifice for this little person, that we just think about, okay, well, what do I need to do to
Yeah.
make sure that this person, this little child grows to be a person, right? Grows to be an adult.
Yeah.
And so we forget um for a long period of time that the sacrifices that we make also have to come with um examples of how we
Yeah.
are living, so that our children see that, right? Like I appreciate all the sacrifices my mother made,
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
than she will ever know. Like I don't think I will ever be able to tell her enough.
Yeah.
But what I didn't see was what she did for herself.
Yeah.
The moments that she took for her personal growth and and happiness. And that was something that I think was very difficult for me to make that mind shift, because I knew that it can't just be all about like what's happening for the boys every day, all day, right? Like it's
Yeah.
got to be something else to it,
Yeah.
because they need to see something else.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah. No, that's true. That's a good point, man. That's a really good point. I thought it was pretty cool when I saw you start a podcast. I'm like, that's unique. That's different. That's pretty cool. So I thought that was unique, and like you said, it's kind of stepping outside of maybe what you had originally would see as the line, right?
right,
But it's useful as needed, man. Especially as fathers, right? We need to be able to talk and be honest about some things, talk about some things, and help each other.
yeah, for sure. And it was, and that's really what it was born out of. It's always just we hear all the time about um how tough it is for to parent, right? We also hear how moms are making sacrifices, but I think is and I'm not taking anything away from that, because mothers are making sacrifices for their children.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
growing up in single parent home, I know that without
Yeah.
a shadow of
Yeah.
a doubt. But
Yeah.
I wanted dads to know that there was an opportunity for them to have conversations, to be able to fully like um feel comfortable talking about what they're going through as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
I've seen the um I think one of the things that kind of clicked for me was just seeing pictures of a dad trying to do his daughter's hair.
Yeah.
I don't have no daughters,
Yeah.
but I could only imagine, if you are like it would have been my case had Yvette been, if he had a girl and Yvette was still working, the crazy shifts, and I had to get up and get the boys together in the morning. If I had a daughter, getting her together in the morning, like trying to do her hair. I'm like, that's a very real thing, and it's not just moms that have to deal with that, right? Like if you, as a parent, both parents have to learn how to deal with that on some level. And
Yeah.
but as a father, we have this added layer that some people would say that you shouldn't talk about as much now, right? Because the whole concept of gender roles and da 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 da, like everybody's talking about that. But I have a shirt on right now that my wife gave me. It says husband protector. It says husband, daddy, protector, hero. Right.
Nice. Yeah.
And you can't see the whole thing, but that's what it says. And I oftentimes think about that because I am the protector of this family.
Yeah.
My wife is a protector of this family as well, but that is one of my major roles, is to
Yeah.
protect my family, to guide my family, to lead my family. And being able to have a place where fathers can come together and talk about that, I
Yeah.
think is really important. So
Man, it is important. I mean, I think it's awesome. I'm glad you're doing it. I'm like you. I still hold very much to the more traditional role of what a father and a husband is in the household. The power, right? The power that is behind having a father and a husband in the home. I think it's so powerful. And to this day, you talk about fathers trying to do their daughter's hair. To this day, it was one of the running jokes in our family. My wife she still laughs all the time. Our oldest daughter, Tajay, when she was younger, I tried to do her hair, I guess what you call it. Man, it was a mess. We were trying to, I think maybe we were going to church or something. I don't know, my wife was out of town. Man, I tried to do her hair. It was a mess. But to your point, hey, I did what I could. It was the best I could do. I was trying to, man. But yeah, I mean, we have that part. That also is a valuable lesson. I don't know if you've had this experience, John, but one of the greatest lessons I think I learned as a father is the power of presence. Like, you don't have to always have the right answer, do the right, but just being there, the presence gives your children such confidence. Just the fathers, just knowing my dad is here. He's here. He's with me. He's beside me. He's cheering me on. Like that alone just gives them a lot of confidence. That's powerful.
Completely agree. Completely agree. I mean, I see it when I look at my boys, that it's not about my doing the right thing all the time, but it's about being able to be there for them, right? To take those moments to let them know that whatever they're going through, I'm here. And I may not know the right answer. I may not know. I may not have any answer, but what I do have is a ear and a shoulder, and we can sit and we can not talk about it or talk about it, and I think even at this young age they know that they can come to me, and if they don't, I'm gonna continue to kind of hammer that home for them, because that's absolutely the case. I don't want them to ever feel like they can't come to me. So let me ask you this. Teenagers, you got teenagers plus now. What would you say was one of the biggest things that you started to learn once your oldest became a teenager, and now that you have all teenagers, what was one of the things that you wish you would have known about raising teenagers?
I think I wish I would have known that what I've learned over time is that teenagers kind of need, especially when they get to late teenagehood, not like so much 12, 13, when they get to like 17, 18, 19, they need, as much as they need somebody to tell them what they do, they more so need somebody to be there to consult with, to help guide. because at that point, you can tell them what to do just because they live in your house and they got to follow your rules.
Right.
But they've kind of at that point to begin to develop into like individual personalities and know what they kind of like and don't like, want, don't want. So I know for me, I found like with my sons, especially, it's been more beneficial when they can come to me and say, hey, Dad, this is what I'm thinking about. And I just kind of listen, ask them questions that will help them make good choices versus me telling them, this is what I think you should do, son. I did it. I already made that mistake. Don't make that mistake. Do this. That had, to me, I found that that hasn't been as effective because kids are independent thinkers these days and they want to be able to. So I find that I'm more like, I listen, I offer some thoughts on, but hey, this is what I've seen. This is what I've, encountered. What do you think about that? And then let them make their own decision. So for me, that's one of the big things that we notice as all teenagers in the house. Our conversation is kind of shifted in that way with them.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, I'm obviously still got a couple years to go before I start having.
Yeah, you got a little while.
But I think that's good advice to not necessarily spend as much time like talking at them, but let them know like, hey, I'm here.
Plus they won't rely like, so like your kids at their age now, they kind of rely on you for everything.
Right.
Like for the most part, they become teenagers, their friends, the voices in their life get louder. Like their friend's voice now has a place in their life. Their boyfriend or girlfriend's voice have a place in their life. Whereas your voice right now is the only voice. Your size.
Well, my Trey got a little girlfriend.
Okay. Well, okay. But then I guess I guess there's a little voice there.
Hey, I say that, and she's a cute little girl. I know her father. They go to school together. Very nice, but it is so weird to hear my little son talk about my girlfriend. I'm like,
that is funny. So this is his first. Is this his first like his first little girlfriend?
No, actually, interestingly enough, he's we got a whole. I told my wife, I was like, man, I am so worried for him because he's got his father's heart. And that means it's going to be broken more times than he can remember. And he I don't know what it looks like for a 7-year-old or even a 4-year-old to fall in love, because when he was 4, he had a little girlfriend and his little preschool. But I know what heartbreak looks like, and when I see it, we're gonna have to have some conversations and sit down and have a good cry about it, because it's going to happen, and that's just because he's got this heart for people and for he loves hard, even at the age of 7.
Even at the age of 7, that is a tough one. I tend to be that way too. My wife says it all the time. She's like, you love hard, and so do my kids. So yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. But yeah, that was the biggest thing we found, was that the voices in their lives, it was no longer just mostly daddy and mommy's voice. The voices in their lives, they became teenagers. They had more voices, and so obviously they have respect and love for you. So your voice still carries the most weight most of the time. But as they get like 19, 20, you'll have this to look forward to. Sometimes they will think that their friends know more or know better.
I know it's funny to hear that, but yeah, you're right. It's like I'm like, I don't know. They haven't lived any longer than you have, so I don't know how they know.
They're in the same situation you're in, but they telling you how to get out of the situation that they're still in.
Right.
But we manage that by not, again, we don't always tell them what to do. We just there to listen to it and say, hey, here's some thoughts. If you want to, use it, you can, and kind of go from there.
Now, I don't know what it's going to look like for me in the future, right? I don't know what technology is going to look like. I don't know what the relationships that my kids will have will look like. But I do want to talk a little bit. You mentioned earlier about technology and how big of a part technology plays, especially in the twins' life, but probably also in your older 2 kids' lives as well. How has that and you also mentioned about how you talk to specifically the twins differently about the world because of technology. What are some things, if you were to give like a couple of points for parents of teenagers to think about, or that you've learned as you've been talking to your kids about the world around them and technology and things like that?
Well, one of the things is, I mean, technology now has really taken the place for the most part of common everyday interaction. So all the interactions for my twins, for the most part, are 90% of them are via technology. They connect with their friends, on the video games via technology. They interface with the world through technology. What they see is through technology. My kids don't even watch TV anymore, really. Not my kids. They generally use their phone
Yep.
is what they're watching. They're watching YouTube or something on their computer.
Right.
What's this anime? Like, is that the like the karate, not the karate, but
It's
the
like it's like
cartoon,
Japanese cartoons or
like a
whatever.
Japanese,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Japanese
yeah,
cartoon,
yeah,
animated Japanese
yeah,
cartoon.
yeah.
Like they watch that. So they don't interact with the world the same because of technology.
Right.
So my conversations with my kids have really been different in terms of how they interact with the world, even in terms of how they go about looking at their future. I'm like, well, future, the technology is the future. I mean, we
Right.
do everything through technology. So now you got to kind of look at what you want to do through the lens of technology. Um, so, I mean, my whole conversation's changed. But one of the things I've had to do, John, I don't know if you do this at all. Probably not at the phase yet with your kids, but I'm trying to become more savvy with like I understand technology and all that for me, my age group,
Right.
but I'm trying to become even more savvy with it, right? And to understand, because I'm sitting there looking at my son, and he's got this one YouTuber that he watches that plays Madden, right?
Hmm.
And so he's watching the guy play the game, play the video game, and that's the whole. He just sits there and watches this other guy play the
My
video game.
my kids do it too. That
For the whole life of me, I'm like, you sitting there watching a dude play a video
Like,
game,
we
like
got
what
you a
are you?
$300 video game system over there. You can play the game yourself,
Yeah,
but you
but you want
rather
to
watch.
watch. And this kid, and look, I more power to him, but this kid's getting rich,
Yep.
literally getting
Yep.
rich off of that. So my conversation changed. I'm like, well, what do you know about YouTube? What do you know? Like, what do you foresee yourself being able to do with this type of thing? So, like, I just try to embrace it as much as I can, as long as it's healthy. I
Yeah.
try to embrace it and let my conversation surround it because that's what they understand. Like, I can go back all day long and say all kind of stuff about how it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. They've never seen that, so
Right.
they can't relate to it.
Right.
So,
And for me, it's interesting because I work with kids.
oh
Um,
yeah, that's right.
so working in school, I have advisees, ninth grade advisees this year, and I talk with them all the time about their digital footprint, right? Their digital life and what that looks like, it feels like, and how important it is to be very careful with what they choose to share online. And I say that as someone who's sitting here with a podcast sharing everything online, but but at the same time, they're in their young lives, like just trying to really be very cautious about like doing too much
Yeah,
online, and being very intentional about what they're doing. um and we talk a lot about how there are people who have made careers out of doing things on the internet, YouTube, podcasts,
yeah,
the whole nine, and young people who started off when they were 13, 14 years old, just talking about the things that interest them most, which actually kind of leads into another thing that I wanted to talk about and address. And this will probably be the last question that we talk about today. But the idea of you know, and we talked a little bit about this, about helping our kids figure out um, what they're interested in, right? Trying to find a trajectory and things like that. But
yeah,
the idea of what does that look like now that you are trying to learn more about technology, and the kids have technology as a part of everything they do. As you're learning about the technology piece, you're learning more about like what they're doing on YouTube and what they're doing on social media and things like that. Like how has that changed? Like what nuances of your conversations have changed with them about um maybe the things that they've already talked about they want to do in the future, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, have the kids, well, you obviously your older ones are often, running, trying to do in careers and or starting off in careers, but how has that changed the conversation, the nuances of the conversation?
Yeah, you talking about in terms of how they envision the future and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talk a lot with our twins about that. My son Micah, he's um, very much into technology and things like that. So we've even talked about, hey, when you look at, Micah's one, he is interested in going to college. So I say when you look at it, you should look at it through see if there's a college that has a program that is going to help you in the area of technology. Look at that. Like he definitely is into like production, video. He sits and creates entire videos. He does all the splicing and whatever the terminology is, the editing.
The editing.
Yeah, all of those things, and he just uses regular free software that you can download and pulls them together. So I'm like, you can create a career out of that. I mean, there's entire businesses and organizations that have built platforms around social media and how they brand themselves, and they meet people who are professionals that can do that.
Absolutely.
Churches, if I ever decide to pastor again, one of the stipulations will be we'll have to have a very strong budget for social media and brand. Like you got to have a set aside budget that you have a person that's paid just to do that.
Yeah.
So that's a real part of our society. So yeah, that's the kind of conversations we have. His twin sister, she's an artsy person, so she's very she draws and all those things. And so you used to do that freehand, or used to do that with I don't know, art pencils and pen, all that kind of stuff. Now you do that digitally, right? You can't.
Everything on the computer. Yep.
Yep. So we just talk about those things. School, you know this better than me. Like all the students have digital devices, and they do school through digital about devices and things. Even in person, they still using digital devices.
Right.
So yeah, man. So that's the conversation for everything.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting, and it's again, there are kids that are the age of your kids right now who have put together just little things kind of that they enjoy doing on TikTok, on YouTube, and have gotten noticed on Instagram, and they've gotten noticed by big companies. I remember seeing a young black guy who pretty much he created this video of his favorite animation, like his favorite characters from cartoons, spliced them all together, like had the effects in it, got contacted by Disney.
Wow.
Like, so amazing. I mean, so that's the world we live in, and that's why when I talk to my advisees about their digital footprint, I say, it's be intentional about the things you're doing. Like, really think about it in a very meaningful way, and if it's something that you love, great, go for it, do it. So I mean, that's awesome. Well, it's weird calling you James, but I'm gonna say, James, it's been great talking with you. I really appreciate this. This has been a great opportunity for me to kind of sit and chat with you, which I know we've talked before, but I don't think we've ever really had a lot of time to just kind of sit and chat. And I know this is a very interesting forum to do it in, with the 4 people who listen to the podcast. That's my running joke. We got 4 people listening. I think it might be more than 4 now, a couple more than that. But I do appreciate you taking time to do this, to take this opportunity to be on Daddy Confessions and chat with me. For all those listening, if you're interested in Daddy Confessions, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on all your favorite podcast platforms. You can check us out. You can subscribe. So thank you, James, for being here. Have a great day. Enjoy your family. Tell everyone I said hello.
I will. I will. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
no, it's been great. This has been great. This has been another episode of Daddy Confessions. Thank you. Peace.